Okay.
When did you get?
My name is Samuel Garcia, and today I have an interview with World War II veteran Mr. Thomas Poole.
Yes.
Hello, Mr. Thomas Poole.
Hi, Samuel.
Oh,
Okay, so you were 15.
Are we on camera?
Yeah. Okay, so you were 15 when Japan attacked Pearl Harbor.
That's right.
Were there any people that you knew who wanted to join the war after?
Yes, a number of my older schoolmates wanted to, and several did. But most wanted to stay in to graduate so that they would have a better chance of getting a better position in the service.
Oh, yeah. And their decision, did that affect you in any way?
Not at that point. That was December. I was in the, you said earlier that you're in the 10th grade.
Yes.
I was in the first semester of the 10th grade.
Yeah.
In those days, you went to a junior high school for 9th grade, so this was my first year at high school, the Central High School in Philadelphia. So I was brand new at that point.
And during that time,
yes.
did you ever think about going to the war before?
Yes, although it was 3 years before I would turn 18, and it seemed a long way off at that point. Turned out to be a very short time, but it seemed to me to be a long way off in December of 1941, when I wasn't going to turn 18 until June of 1944.
How did the draft affect you and your family when you were called up to go to war?
They lost a son to the service, and I don't know that it affected them immediately, at least, in any other way. We'll let the phone ring. The voicemail will pick it up. They felt sad, I think. I'm guessing how they responded, although I could tell from the letters that they missed me. But it was a question of adjusting to the war, and a lot of families, particularly a lot of the families around us, had people in the service, had several in some cases. I was the oldest brother, so I was the only one in the service at that time.
Yeah. So you weren't the only one in your family to go to war, right?
I don't know it.
I was in World War II. My brother was younger, and he didn't go until after he graduated from college in 1953.
I grew up with.
So that was almost 10 years after.
Yeah. So you were the only one in your family to go to World War II.
To World War II, yes.
Yeah. So.
And during World War II, did any of your family members get a job manufacturing war materials or anything?
What?
One of my cousins worked for RCA, and he was involved in war production. He didn't go into the service, and he stayed with RCA for most of the war. Before I went into the service, between high school and for several months, between high school and when the draft called, I worked for the International Harvester Company, which made farm equipment in Philadelphia. They had a branch office in Philadelphia, and it was actually a parts department for covering the eastern seaboard. So I guess I was as close to being in that area as any of the other members of the family. But that was only for several months.
And all these companies that were making these materials, they all switched to making war materials.
Oh yes, for example, the Ford Motor Company, instead of making automobiles, made B-24 bombers.
Yeah.
And that was typical of a lot of companies. Although the company that I worked for, the International Harvester Company, continued to manufacture farm equipment. I can recall that on many occasions
used to it.
I would arrive for work, and there would be a railroad car with tractors on it in the siding next to the building, the rail siding next to the building,
Oh, yes.
because they were continuing to manufacture tractors, not as many as they made before the war, but there was still a need, and people had to eat, especially the troops.
How long
Yeah.
are you going to stay?
And was there like a particular battle in World War II that pushed you to your limits?
Oh,
Well, I was very lucky. I went overseas in middle of April of 1945 to
did you
Europe,
like it?
and I landed in France on April 30th, 1945, and the war ended 9 days later, May 8th of 1945. So I never saw combat. I stayed in Germany and was part of the occupation until August of 1946, but I never heard a shot
It
fired.
takes time.
I learned to fire a lot of weapons, but I never fired any in anger.
And any of your like
Seems
teammates
You're doing
over there
very well.
wanted to go back home, or they're like scared?
Well, I joined a number of organizations, outfits over there
Do they
with
like
men
it?
who had been in combat, and they admitted that they were scared.
They'll
Yes,
get used
that
to it.
combat wasn't fun, and I talked with several after they got home, and they had to have counseling
Yeah.
to sort of rid them of the
Yeah.
attitudes, or not attitudes, but
I grew up
reactions that they had to
Makes a
combat.
difference.
It wasn't fun.
Yeah. And it was like
Pardon me?
World War One when people came back and they had like
Oh.
shell shock.
No,
Yeah, well, they had different
right.
names for it. In World War I, they called it shell shock. In World War II, they
Yes.
called it combat fatigue. And what are we calling it today? There's a different term for it today.
Well,
I'm
yes.
not sure what it is.
Yes.
So during the war, was there any time to like relax,
I don't
or
know.
were you always like prepared to go to fight?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yes,
Battles last
I like that.
sometimes for one day, sometimes for a week,
Yes. It's a
but
silly
you are
one.
not constantly being fired at. The enemy is moving
Where do you
around,
live?
you're moving around.
Yeah.
You can go several days without having any contact with the enemy, but then for any length of time, maybe a couple of hours, maybe a day, maybe 2 days, you'll be engaged in battle. For example, the famous battles in the Civil War,
Sure. Well,
like
that's-
Gettysburg. Gettysburg was a 2, 3, 4 day battle. It didn't last forever,
Yeah.
but it was intense,
Yeah.
Well, you
extremely
get
intense
used to it.
for those few days.
Yeah, and was there a difference in terms of technological abilities
Do you
of the
plan
Allies
to
and Axis
stay
powers?
here?
Well, the weapons were
Be
different.
here
The
always?
Americans had very good weapons. As far as most of the smaller weapons were concerned, I think we have to admit that the Germans had a better tank in the King Tiger tank, but the American weapons were sufficient to win the war. We outnumbered them.
And during the war, what gun did you mostly use?
Mostly used the M1 rifle and the 81 millimeter mortar,
Sure. I think it's.
which is what
it's
was
hard
regarded
to
in the
do.
infantry as a heavy weapon,
Yeah.
Yes,
because it's,
indeed.
well, it's bigger than a rifle, and it shoots ammunition that's considerably bigger than a rifle.
Yeah. And the M1 Garand is one of the best weapons America has had.
Yes, that was a wonderful weapon.
Is that
Yeah.